welcome to yet another Wellbeing Wednesdays with Harvinder Aruna on BW Wellbeing World. My guest today is Sister Jayanti. Sister Jayanti is the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris, the world's largest spiritual organization to be led by women. Sister Jayanti embodies a unique blend of Eastern wisdom with the Western education and culture, imparting the deepest spiritual truths with the utmost clarity. Her prominent speaking themes include leadership. She speaks on environment and climate change and also on women's empowerment. She's passionate about health and well being, racial harmony, interreligious friendships, and global peace. Let's speak to Sister Jayanti. So, Sister Jayanti, welcome to Wellbeing Wednesdays, a show that we run on BW Wellbeing World. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. Gratitude for your time. Sister Jayanti, before I begin this conversation, I would love to know how did you join Brahma Kumaris and what inspired you to be involved with this organization?
I was very fortunate that my family was in contact with Dadi Janki, who lived in Pune at that time. And Dadi Janki, of course, later became the head of our organization. And this was way back in the 50s. And so through my mother, grandmother, grandfather, I got to know Dadi Janki when I was very, very young. And she inspired us to go to Delhi to meet Brahma Baba. And that was just before we migrated to the UK in December 1957. And so my mother continued with her practice living in London. And we would have meditation at night, myself, my little brother, and my mother. And we would be listening a little bit to some of the teachings. But a point came when we forgot our Hindi and it was sort of going above our head. And so we stopped the evening sessions. And I'd meet Brahma Baba and the mother of the organization. We called her Mama Mateshwari. And this continued till I was about 18. And I joined university. And then after a term at university, I was thinking that I need to connect with my roots and take time out. And so I came back to India for an extended period. And during that time, I went to see Dadi Janki. This was April 68. And by then, I was confused, thinking about which path should I be taking apart from a career, but what sort of lifestyle should I be having? Because there was the Western traditional path, the Western permissive society, the traditional Hindu path, the path that my mother was following, Raj Yoga, a spiritual path, and I really didn't know. And meeting Dadi Janki at that time, she was speaking about conscience and how our conscience has got overlaid with influences from outside, media, society, friends, education, all of that. And so everything seems to be a bit gray, nothing very clear. And I said, well, how do you come out of that? And she said, you have to meditate. So my journey started. And this was just April 68. And from then on, I've been involved in first minor way, and then I was asked to go. I surrendered, and Brahma Baba was around at the time. And then in 69, when Brahma Baba had left for this physical body, my parents wanted me to come back to London, which I did. And gradually things started, and they were instrumental in starting a center in London in 1971. And the story continues.
Lovely, lovely. I mean, the word that you use, surrender, has such a huge impact on people's life only if they understand. Sister Jayanti, could you share some of the core principles and teachings of the Brahma Kumaris that had a profound impact on your own spiritual journey? What was the core?
The first lesson that I took with one of the teachers in Pune at that time stays with me till now as the foundation for everything. And that is the understanding of the self, because that had been my confusion. Where do I belong? Who am I? East or West? I really didn't know. And I think that understanding that I'm not this physical body, but I am that inner being, the being of light. I am a soul. And then understanding how the mechanics of thoughts and feelings and consciousness and conscience and personality all tie together within this point of light that I truly am. I think that is the fundamental transformation that began at that time and continues till now. And even today, I think that so many of the issues that we're facing globally could be resolved if we come back to that understanding of who am I. And it sounds like a cliche, but it's actually true that until there's this awareness of the self, then nothing else can move forward. And together with that, then a question that I'd had that nobody had been able to answer, well, who exactly is God? And of course, Christianity and Hinduism, everybody has different opinions about that. And when I understood that the soul is a point of light and God, Param Atma, is a soul, and that image is the one that you see behind me, that point of light. Although a point is tiny, infinitesimal, but a point is also infinite, no length, no width, no breadth, no height. So that understanding of God as a being of light was something that I began to experience in my meditation. And so I think it's these two fundamental things that are part of my understanding and realization, but also the organization as such. These are the two messages that we really want to share with all. And maybe part of the self-realization, again, that's very, very important is to know that there is goodness and kindness and compassion within the self. And so where today there's either ego or there's lack of self-esteem, but coming back to the awareness of who I truly am, then you're liberated from both of these fluctuations of up and down, and you really are able to maintain your own dignity.
Sister Jayanti, you studied in UK, and how did you bridge the gap between the Eastern spirituality and the principles that evolved from there, along with the Western culture, to make the spiritual learnings more accessible and to the wider audience in a manner that they understand it today? And how is it any different from the Brahma Kumari philosophy? Is it any difference?
I think it was more Dadi Janki who actually made the bridge. And at that point, I was simply her translator. But the way that she had been able to capture my mind and imagination was absolutely the way that when she came to England, although the center started in 1971, it was when she came in 1974 and stayed for 40 years, traveling a lot, but basically staying with us. She was able to put across the teachings in a way that was very relevant. And because I know from my experience that it was the awareness of the self and the connection with the divine that was the most important, that was what she was sharing with everybody else also. But for me, I know that I had so many questions about what's going on inside my own inner world, and there was nobody to answer them. And Dadi was able to answer them so simply, so beautifully. Again, the concept of God. We have so many different concepts and ideas, and sometimes they're in direct conflict with each other. But when it's based on something, A, that you can understand, and B, you're able to experience for yourself, and it's an experience that can be renewed every single time you attempt that, So it's not something that happens sometimes and not others, but there's a formula you use and you practice, and you're able to get to that experience in a deeper and more profound way each time. Remove the rituals, the scriptures, and all of those things, which are totally different everywhere, but come back to the essence of the self and the connection with the divine. And of course, this is what everybody's looking for, east or west or north or south.
Absolutely, Sister Jayanti. But in the modern world, uh, people are more inclined to understand the science behind how things work. How do you envision the role of spirituality addressing the challenges and the complexities of the modern world today?
I'm seeing that whether people understand spirituality or not, all people understand that values are the fundamental foundation for civilization or human relationships. So whether it's global or whether it's personal, it's values that are important. And today, what has happened to values? They've disappeared from our lives. Again, both personally and individually, but also globally. You cannot trust yourself. You cannot trust anyone else. And so when trust breaks down in the world and you don't know who you can trust anymore, you can see the chaos that exists in the world today. And so when people begin to think about values and they experiment with coming back to the inner being, they begin to recognize that values lie within. And as a result of that, then they understand how their own life can change for the better, but also they're able to help others also create a better life. But together we can create a better world for tomorrow. If I just give you one example, when I don't know myself and I fluctuate between ego and depression, as most people generally do, what is missing is respect for the self. And when I understand my own core values and I'm in touch with them and I can feel them being used in my life, my respect for myself returns and I can respect you. I begin to respect the laws of this world, my country. I begin to understand the spiritual laws. I respect all forms of life. I respect nature. And as a result, our relationship with each other, but also with the country, but also with God, and of course, nature begins to change. Now, think about how many issues that resolves. The environment, the breakdown of the environment, where we've created a situation where the earth is actually coming to the point where it's uninhabitable. Think about the temperature. I know that India is going through huge temperature rise, but also floods. It's probably changing day by day, but I know that a little while ago they said there were floods in 7 different states in India. In Britain, the temperature fluctuates dramatically from one day to the next. Europe is going through a scorching heat wave. Canada has had wildfires since, I think, April. Everything is just devastated. And we are trying to find ways to be able to repair the damage through technology, but nobody's been able to do anything about it yet. But of course, it's not technology that's the answer. It's human consciousness and our behavior that has created the situation. And when that changes, yes, we can have a better world. We can have a world in which we can be in harmony with each other, but also with the world around us.
Sister Jayanti, I'm intrigued by what you just said, and I want to ask you this question because I'm also penning a book on cancer called Defeating Cancer. My mother died because of cancer. She passed away. But there was a time when we were letting her go, but she was not willing to leave, you know. And there was something holding back. And then we realized that, my wife had just conceived at that time. So her, wanting to see the baby was probably holding the soul back. This has prompted me to study, and I wanted to get your views on this, that two people with the same disease, same prognosis, but one survives and the other does not survive. You know, is there something more than medicine that gives the person the will and wanting to live longer?
Absolutely. Many years ago, there was a medical journalist who came to us to find out what we were doing. And he became a regular student. And from 1980 something, he's still practicing Raj Yoga, and he's now living at our retreat center. And he wrote a book just soon after coming into meditation, Will to Be Well. Now, that is the summary. That really is the summary. And yes, there's been a huge amount of research in the subject of cancer, especially. And what they found is that attitude and consciousness play a major, major role in recovery or departure. And I can give you a list of cancer patients who I know who are still around and are still serving and helping and creating happiness for their families, who simply had that attitude. This is something that's happened. Now, I'm not just going to take the medication. I'm going to take the medication, but I'm also going to every day remind myself of why I'm living, what is the purpose of life, and this is what they've done. One classic example is of a woman who became one of the chiefs of our organization. It was in 1989. I think I've got the year correct. In 1989, she was diagnosed with cancer, and she had the normal therapies. And when she had the chemotherapy, there was another patient who was just across the road, the corridor in the other room, who we also knew. And she would come out of chemotherapy and she would need to rest, of course, but her face didn't show any ill effects at all, because she had kept her consciousness detached from the body, because this is the secret of spirituality. Yes, this body is extremely precious and valuable, but this isn't I. I am that inner being, the soul. And when I keep that consciousness and I experience that detachment from the body, then I can send rays of light to the body that can actually heal the body. And more than that, I can connect with the divine and allow God's light and rays to heal whatever part of the body it is that needs healing. She recovered from that whole situation. And yes, she continued to have medication for decades after that, but it never recurred. And she was able to live and serve the whole community because she was playing a very major role. If you know the Brahma Kumaris, you might have heard about her, Dadi Hirdiya Mohini, but we called her Dadi Gulzar. Her pet name was Gulzar, but her official name was Hirdiya Mohini. And she continued from that year at the end of the 80s till she passed away 2021. And it was a life of constant giving, of love, of wisdom, of purity, of peace to anyone who was in front of her, whether it was the person who was operating the lift or the nurse who was looking after her. She just radiated that peace and truth and purity.
That's such an inspiring story of how, one, you can, like you said, detach your consciousness from your body and then be able to, accept what the divine presence is, and then radiate that love and affection to everyone else and to yourself through that. That's such a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing this, Sister Jayanti. Uh, Sister Jayanti, in the moments of stress and overwhelm, what spiritual practices or perspectives can individuals rely on to find their inner calm and clarity uh, in a way that it could transform themselves? For example, you just mentioned that you have to detach your consciousness from your body. It is easier said than done unless it has been practiced and you know the practice well. What uh, does one need to do?
You picked up on the essential factor, and that is that it's not just theoretical knowing, but it's the practice. And so, say, for example, if you want to cook a nice meal, it doesn't happen just like that. And it doesn't happen just at that moment. It happens through practice. Today, I make chapatis and they're the shape of India. And tomorrow, I practice and practice, and they start coming back to as they should be. And at a certain point, if I practice sufficiently, they're beautiful, they're really round and absolutely perfect. And so, in any situation as simple or as complicated as making a chapati or IT, if put an unknown person in front of a monitor screen and a mouse and they don't even know where to begin. But you understand and you practice and you discover your way around that whole world and you become an expert. It's a question of interest. If I'm interested in learning to do something, then I'm going to give it my attention and focus on it, and I develop the skills. And so this is exactly the same. I experience a moment of peace when I go inside. I want to experience that more and more. And so I give it a little bit more time, a little bit more attention. I focus on that. And there you go. I'm ready. And it's not that you get stressed and then you say, oh my goodness, I should remember I'm a soul, because you'll probably be too much in a frenzy to be able to remember the soul. But it's the practice beforehand, so that when there's a stressful situation, other people get stressed, but you're able to be detached and you can see what are the different options. When a person feels overwhelmed, there's a feeling that there's nothing I can do about this. There's too much, too much, too much. But if I'm stable in the awareness of the self, I look at what are the practical possibilities, and I'm calm enough to be able to see the opportunities. And so then I take the path which I know is the most comfortable and probably is going to bring the best results. And so really everything does depend on consciousness. And you've seen how this loop works. I'm stressed, I make the wrong decisions, I get more stressed, and it's a downward spiral. The situation is the same, but I stay calm. And the result of that is going to be definitely much better. A simple thing, there's traffic. And tell me, which city is it that doesn't have traffic now? It's everywhere. Even Mount Abu, which used to be an idyllic place, we had just a handful of cars. Now there's so much traffic in Mount Abu at the headquarters of the Brahma Kumaris, because it's become a very famous tourist place. So good for the people, good for the community, but not good for the environment and not good for people's nerves. And so I'm in that situation where I can't budge. Everything is just stuck. And physically, there's no option. Time is ticking on and I'm worried, I'm concerned, and I'm getting more and more agitated, and people start hooting their horns, and it doesn't make any difference. It just creates noise pollution and more stress. The other way, I'm sitting in the traffic and I say, well, let me put on something that I can listen to, and listen to with calm, good energy. I put on the meditation, MP3, cassette, tape, whatever it is that people use today. And it immediately gives me that space to just reflect and contemplate and give good vibrations. And I'm actually giving good vibrations to everybody in the car with me, but I'm also giving good vibrations to people in the adjoining cars because they're getting stressed and they're, drumming their fingers and all sorts. And if they look at me, they see me calm. If I look at them, they catch my eye and I'm able to smile at them. And they calm down too. A very simple day-to-day situation. But my choice, how do I respond to it? There's so many podcasts and things that people have. They don't have time to listen to them. And they say, when I have time, well, now is the time. I have 10 minutes, I have 15 minutes. I don't know how long I'm going to be sitting here. Let me listen to something that's uplifting and valuable. So my consciousness will determine the choice that I make. If I'm calm, if I get upset, I don't even see that I have an alternative.
Sister Jayanti, this brings me to my next point, which is, which most of us are facing in our day-to-day life when we are at work. We have deadlines, timelines, deliverables, pressures of cash flow, etc. And what really breaks down or creates pressure is our interactions and conversations. What are some of the ways that we can pick up from the spiritual values and principles that can change our interactions with our co-workers, with our friends, with our family, including our children, that can bring a sense of calm? Because I personally believe that if there is calm, not just for me but for everyone else around me, then I create an environment of peace. So how can we do that in our workplace, in our homes? What is it that we need to do?
You probably have a little device that's extremely valuable and it's probably about this size, and you use it continually all the day. And if at night you didn't plug it in to recharge it, next day it wouldn't work for you. It would be empty, the battery is dead, and you'd be in a panic. What do I do now? But if you remember to charge it at night, it takes 2 seconds to not seconds even, just a moment to just plug it in. But it's then ready for the next day. If each morning I make space for myself to have some time for spiritual study, to move my mind in the right direction, to give my mind a compass in which to move in the right direction. Spiritual study can be whatever is uplifting, whatever is useful for any individual. And for myself, we have the texts of all the teachings that were given through Brahma Baba, the instrument that we recognize the divine speaking through. And they talk about values, they talk about situations, they talk about relationships and the purpose of life, all of these things. So I start with that study and I make time to have silence in my mind, to reflect on these powerful ideas. And so the combination of that means that I'm ready at the start of the day with my cup full. And I'm not going to talk to you because I need something from you, but I'm going to connect with you because there's something nice to share, something from the teachings that I've heard. I walk into the office and there are others around me and somebody's frowning, somebody's concerned, somebody's worried, all sorts. But I walk in and I'm able to genuinely give them a smile and a word, maybe to each one individually, but if not, generally to everyone. And I can just send out those vibrations of peace to everyone. And they begin to notice this. And they begin to come and say, but how come you're so bright and cheery and we're not able to keep that same awareness or attitude? And you can share something with them. But even if it doesn't come to that, people can feel that your presence has a calming influence, because what you're radiating is not fear and anxiety and worry, but what you're radiating is peace and calm and joy. And so the atmosphere begins to change. And the same thing at home, different atmosphere created through one individual, and through that others begin to follow in the same direction. And the same thing at work. An atmosphere is created by our attitude. Vritti se vayumandal. And so my vritti, my attitude, is going to create that atmosphere. And of course, if there's more than one, 2 begin to do the same, 4 begin to do the same. Fantastic. And it actually also means that the work gets done in a more collaborative way without egos coming in. Because the biggest thing that causes breakdown in teams is ego. My idea is the right one, and so it should be like this. That kills collaboration, absolutely. And so any task is going to take 10 times longer. But if there's an attitude of openness and humility, respect, your idea, your idea, your idea, and we put them together, and something more beautiful comes out of that. In that collaboration, then the work will happen fast, and it'll be more beautiful, more accurate, and it'll be a joy to be working together. Then nobody's going to come in on Monday morning with a long face, but everybody is going to come in with joy that we're doing things in a creative way, in a collaborative way that's going to make everything move faster.
Sister Jayanti, a thought just came into our mind while you were talking, that sometimes, a lot of people say that before you react and respond, take a pause, and what is, in your opinion, the concept of time? And this thought got triggered when you use the word moment, because it is in that moment where things could change, your thoughts could change. So what is it that you have to share about the concept of time?
You're absolutely right. In the original scriptures, they used to say, put a bead in your mouth. And what it means is take a pause. Or in English, they say, count 10. Well, we don't even count till 2, never mind 10. And so if I truly, just for a moment, connect with myself inside, then I'm connecting with peace. My response is going to be one that's a responsible one. Usually we just react. We don't respond in an appropriate manner. And so we're actually neglecting our responsibility. My responsibility is to give a response in a positive direction so that then we're able to move forward together. But that doesn't happen because we don't take that moment. When you begin to think about the soul, and you think about how tiny, 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 infinitesimal I, the soul, truly am, and yet how much depth there is within every soul. We carry all our memories, all our experiences, and all of that is encapsulated within this tiny, tiny point of light. You begin to be aware that space and time on an external physical level are very, very narrow concepts, but moving into the awareness of infinity, you're now opening a very different dimension. Some years ago, it was pre-COVID, so it was at least 4 or 5 years ago, the Science Museum in London organized India Week. the Festival of India, but specifically related to science, not fashion and music and food, which are the usual festivals, but science. And they had this amazing array of information about the technologies of medicine that the ancient rishis had used. And they had the names and the years and, all the different techniques, the dental techniques, the operating techniques. And it was quite incredible to see how they'd contacted the people in India who knew about these things and brought these artifacts across. But the one thing I'll never forget is there was a little section and a very short script. And what it stated was that the concept of zero could only have come about through those who were aware of infinity. That's correct. When you move into the awareness of soul consciousness beyond space and time, you're touching infinity. And only somebody who's had that experience of infinity can come up with the concept of zero, of time and space. So that was very beautiful. And I was very glad to see that it was attributed to India, because sometimes things get a bit muddled in human history, and you start thinking, is it China? Is it the Arab countries? Where did it come from? But it was attributed to India and the concept of the soul.
Sister Jayanti, since you mentioned COVID, something that comes to my mind is that there was a lot of sadness that was there around losing lives. And more than that, I think one big challenge that people were facing was about how to deal with grief, or how to deal with people who had to deal with grief. I mean, I know of instances where a child lost both parents and did not know how to deal with it, because there was a grandmother who was having her pain, and there was a grandchild, and the parents went missing. Second were people who knew this child or the grandmother, did not know how to deal with them and help them overcome their grief. Is there something that you would want to share that can help people understand the concept of acceptance and then managing their grief?
It's really amazing in the sense that because of lockdown, one was illness and bereavement, but the other one was where people didn't even get a chance to meet their loved ones before they left. And so it's something that I was getting into quite deeply recently, because a woman in Berlin, a woman who deals with mental health issues, was asked by the Berlin City Council to explore and actually do the research about the impact of COVID in terms of the population of the city. And what she found was this grief that was there in so many, many people because of bereavement in some form or another. And also lockdown created this huge state of trauma in children also, especially children, but also young adults. You can go to study, you were expected to do things online. The world changed dramatically in a very negative way. So yes, all of that is a worldwide phenomenon. It's true. When there's any type of bereavement, if I've understood that the soul is eternal and my thoughts can actually reach the departed soul, you become very aware of this eternal bond that lies amongst loved ones. And if I know that that soul still exists, and if I believe that, and my own experience of the soul will validate that for me, my telling you isn't going to give you the experience. I can tell you that the fragrance of a rose is unique. But if you've not experienced it yourself, oh, I know that mangoes are nice, they smell nice, peaches are nice, they smell nice, but the fragrance of a rose is exquisite and totally different. You wouldn't know until you experienced. So in the same way, I can talk about the amazing connection that you feel with yourself when you explore what's going on inside, and how the soul feels totally free and liberated once you come to that experience. There's no limits, no boundaries. The soul is completely free, no bondages. Through that experience of your own infinity, eternity, you're able then to comprehend that the soul of the other is also eternal, and that the connection with this goes far beyond the limits of the physical body. And that brings some relief. But also, when I know that my thoughts and vibrations can reach them, what do I want to do if I love them? I want to support them on their journey. I don't want them to be pulled back into a situation which can never be possible again, because that body has gone, it's been buried or burned, it's disposed. But my thoughts of God's remembrance and love can help them move forward in their journey. That brings a huge amount of comfort to the ones who have been left behind. And of course, if the grandmother and the grandchild come together with love, then they know that they can support each other in a way that's magical. And so the child's growing up and the grandmother able to witness that in a very close manner, it's a very beautiful experience for the grandmother. But also, of course, it's a very nurturing experience for the child. And there actually is a situation I know of, a woman who comes to us, and different things happened, and her daughter really unable to take care of her children, and finally the connection finished. And she had two young people, a girl and a boy, that she had to raise. And so she would laugh and say, this is my second family. And those young people are now both at university, nearly completing university. And the bond of love that the three of them share is very beautiful to see, and their care for each other. So this is a real life story again. And the woman, of course, coming every single day for meditation and sharing those ideas with her. And while the children were young, they were coming also, and now they're very busy, so they come sometimes, but still very appreciative of what meditation has done for their grandmother, but also what meditation has done for them. And in their home, they have a little meditation room, which, although the young ones don't come here so frequently, they start their day going into that room and sitting in silence. And so I've seen how bringing God back into the center of your life, coming to a spiritual consciousness, can have very dramatic, beautiful effects.
Sister Jayanti, I remember some time back you had just mentioned while we were conversing that this earth, this planet that we live in, may not be inhabitable if we do not take care of it. Is there something that we can, using spirituality, share with the world so that we can reconnect with nature? We can foster a strong bond with this Mother Earth. And also the reason I'm asking you this is because, while we are benefiting from the technological advancements that we see today, but it is at the cost of the environment. So what is it that your thoughts are on nurturing the nature, taking care of the environment, and saving this planet that allows us to live the way we live.
Again, there are two different concepts that I want to share. One is what I'm doing right at the very moment, and the other is the vision that I hold of the future. And when you started to talk about time earlier, there was one particular aspect that I shared, but the other concept that is prevalent in the East is that of time being cyclical. And in the West, it's more that there's a beginning and an end. There's a big bang and maybe another big bang at the end, and that's it. But in the East, there's this concept of time going round in a circle so that time is eternal. And that also I understood only when I practiced soul consciousness and I understood the eternity of the soul. It became real for me, and the concept of time became real. So here we are in a place of darkness. But what happens in nature? After the night, the day comes. It's normal, it's natural. After the winter, spring comes. Again, it's totally normal. But the same thing applies to time. We're in a period that we call Kali Yuga, the dark age, the age of the machine, the age of death, Kal, death. It's Kali Yuga. But what's ahead of us is not an end, but a new beginning, Satyug. And the change that is happening now is this transition from the darkness to the light. And you see so many more people interested in meditation, people turning to vegetarian diet. I mean, in India, they're all turning the other way, but abroad, they're turning from meat diet to vegetarian diet or even vegan diet. There are now, laws about not drinking and driving in India also. There's laws about not smoking in public places, and people become aware of all of this. A holistic approach to many things, health especially. So light is entering the world, and we're at the threshold of a new world. And we're just waiting for a minimum level of people to come to that consciousness so that they shift from the material consciousness of today to a spiritual consciousness. And that's the future that I hold in my vision. And what I need to do today is to again begin to develop gratitude for what Mother Earth has given me, an appreciation of that, and secondly, respect in my dealings with nature. Whether it's abroad or in India, there's an expression that says, tread lightly on the earth. And that means, well, how strong is my carbon footprint? What is it that I'm doing that's, again, damaging the earth? Am I taking more than I'm ready to give? And of course, up until now, as you said, you've just taken without any consideration. And it's time now to reverse that, to create I'm going to use this Hindi word, sanskaras, these patterns of behavior, which we call sanskaras. So it's time for me to change my sanskaras and to be able to appreciate cleanliness, to be able to appreciate what nature gives to me each day and every day. And am I polluting the air? Am I polluting the water? Am I further polluting the earth? Or am I able to restrict what it is I take and reduce my carbon footprint? Plant-based diet goes a long way towards reducing my footprint. The other thing is a life of simplicity, where I thought that consumerism and materialism and taking from nature was going to bring me happiness. For how long? I have the latest model of a phone. Well, in a short time, there'll be another model which is later than the latest I have. and I want that. But this is perfectly fine. It's perfectly adequate. And it's still very useful for me. Why do I want to take more? Whether it's shoes or clothes or anything, we just keep thinking that acquisition is the way to get happiness. And it's not true. Our experience tells us it's not true, but we're not even listening to what our own experience is telling us. And so to come back to the awareness that happiness lies within, happiness not through accumulation, but actually happiness is through being able to give away, to give to others. And so can I start doing that? Instead of taking, start giving, but also realizing that my happiness lies within, and I don't need anything more than the basic essentials. Can I prune everything down to a minimal so that I'm able to manage and manage perfectly well without any sense of deprivation? Because there's actually a greater joy that I start experiencing when I'm more free. When I accumulate, there's too much stuff and my mind is too scattered. If I reduce, I have less externally, but I'm more free inside.
Mr. Jayanti, my next question to you is around, superstitions. How can spirituality provide comfort in the face of uncertainty? Because that's what the fear is all about. And without relying on superstitions, but to do it in a way that it respectfully addresses superstitions without just dismissing people's beliefs in those. How would you address superstitions being a spiritual leader? What is your advice to the world?
The beautiful thing about spirituality, and one of the factors that made me stay with spirituality and Raj Yoga, is that there's an explanation given for everything. Say, for example, you begin the day with Surya Namaskar, and it's a practice that many people have, but actually start exploring it on a physical, scientific level, and it makes total sense. Respect for nature, but also just the stretches and the exercise that it offers the body, which otherwise all day is just going to be sitting down. It's beautiful. So it's not just a practice or a ritual, but there's significance behind it, there's meaning behind it. And so spirituality actually helps me ask the question of what is the significance of this? What is the meaning behind this? And when I begin to understand the meaning behind something, I'll give you another example. I didn't know about Rakhi and Raksha Bandhan living abroad. I hadn't seen it happen. And when we first went back to India after having been away 6 years, my cousins in India, the girls were all buying these Rakhis for their brothers, and they told me I should do the same. And my brother was 11 and I was 15. And I thought, he was younger than me. He's much smaller than me at that time. Now he's, of course, much taller. And I thought, well, is he going to protect me? How is he going to protect me? And they say, no, you have to do this. And so it was fun. So you buy a Rakhi and do all of this. Now you understand the spiritual significance. And it's not just one brother, but you're my brother. Or in fact, we can see the whole world as one family. And if I see the whole world as my family, with the divine as my parent, now we are here to support each other, protect each other, and work together. Now, Raksha Bandhan makes sense. So when you tie the Rakhi, it's a symbolic external gesture, but it's a reminder of the bond that exists amongst all humanity, but also the one who's truly the protector. When I connect with God, and it's God that's between you and me, then the parent is the one who's protecting all of us, but also, of course, with our relationship of that spiritual awareness, we're supporting each other also. So that's one ritual that instantly made sense when I was explained what Raksha Bandhan really is. So everything that we've continued through generations, it's become a ritual, and we forget about the origin and why we're doing something. For example, another system that is there in Bhakti, you're told, put things in a tray, a thali, whether it's fruits, whether it's food that's been cooked, and offer it to God first. Now, a young person will say, oh, nonsense, and totally dismiss it. But that appreciation in that offering for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, is gratitude to God, is the awareness that God and nature have provided me with all of this. I didn't make the banana. Somebody may have planted something, but they didn't make it. It existed. So the seeds existed before the fruits can come into existence. So the seeds were there. Where do they come from? They came from fruits. So it's an eternal cycle in nature. So just that simple act of actually sitting down and expressing that thanks and gratitude to God and nature is something that reduces the human ego. Gratitude has a way of bringing you back to earth and making you realize that there are energies beyond your capacity that are taking care of you. And so everything has significance, but I have to ask the question, what is the meaning behind this? What is the purpose behind this? And then, yes, when you understand, then you don't want to miss it. You want to do it.
Sister Jayanti, one more pressing question that I really have, which I wish to really ask you, is that we say that, we have come to this earth, we've taken a birth to fulfill some larger purpose. And most of us are unable to figure out, how do I know that what is the purpose that I have been, with which I have come on and taken this birth on this planet? Is there a way that can help us discover what could be our inner purpose that we need to fulfill, or that we ought to fulfill?
I'll share my own experience. Age 15, going back to India, the poverty was so stark that it was a shock. And it made me realize that my life mustn't just be for myself, but it has to be of some type of service. But I didn't know how and what and when and why. And it was through meditation that I began to realize what it is to be able to give, and that is the purpose of life, to be able to give others something. And then you find your own way, and you discover how within your particular situation or your particular skills and talents, you can give something to the world to help the world become a better place. And so I think that time for the self, time to understand the spiritual laws, all of this creates that container in which then you have the space to think, well, what is really my contribution to the world? And that is purpose. What is it that I can give to the world?
Sister Jayanti, a lot of us, based on our experience with other people, we carry a lot of baggage with us. There are a lot of grievances that we have. And how can we balance the belief in karma with the idea of forgiveness and letting go of the past grievances, so that we can live happily?
Forgiveness is the way to have freedom and find happiness for myself. If I'm not ready to forgive, I carry that poison in myself, and it's going to stay and disturb me and create a problem for me in other relationships too. If there's poison in here, then it's not just for one individual with whom I have a grievance, but it filters through into everything else that I do. There's a discontent continually. And so when I understand that forgiveness is not giving to another, it's actually giving freedom to myself, then perhaps I'm more ready to start forgiving. But for me, it was being able to take God's love so that the heart is able to open up and you can have the generosity of spirit to say, for whatever is their karma, it's their connection with the divine that they have to sort out. But I don't have to carry the memory of their karma within myself. I can let go and become free, or I can hang on to it and it becomes a burden for me that stays with me till the end of my days. And I choose to be free. And so I'm ready to let go. But the first step is to be able to take God's love. Another step for me also was recognizing that I'm able to continue only because I have been forgiven my mistakes. And there's no human being who hasn't made mistakes. But seniors and elders around me were able to forgive me. God was able to forgive me. And so I'm able to move. If they hadn't given that forgiveness, where would I be today? And so the appreciation of what I've received also made sure that I could open my heart and say, I can forgive also. So spirituality teaches us so many things.
That is such a beautiful perspective, Sister Jayanti. I can go on and continue this conversation for hours. I'm enjoying it so much. I mean, there's so much, beautiful insights that I am getting. I think it is going to help me change myself. It started with the conversation where you used the word surrender, which I felt was a great virtue that anyone should have, to let go of their ego and accept things the way they are and people the way they are. Then the concept of time, the way you explained it to me, was just a different perspective that I had never thought of. Sister Jayanti, and the other thing is, when you said that the soul is there, when we were talking of grief, the soul is there, and my connect, as my experience, will always remain. That changed my perspective of understanding of how to handle grief and, accept it without having a sense of losing someone. These were such beautiful, points that you brought out. I have immense gratitude for you to take out time to have this conversation so that we could help it reach our audience and could do our bit to transform or help people transform. Thank you so much for your time, Sister Jayanti. Gratitude.
Well, I'm very grateful that all of you are making that space and time to share these ideas. And of course, the more we explore the spiritual dimension, the more we realize what human life can really be like. Very, very beautiful, very fragrant, full of all the virtues, and really experience the joy of living. So I hope that the work that you're doing and all your colleagues will be exploring these things in further and further depth. Thank you.
Absolutely.